Is the sky blue? An obvious yes, right? But what about the question, what shade of blue? Well, it depends. Where do you live? How many words for blue do you know? Are you someone with a visual impairment? Is it cloudy, or is there something blocking the sky? Our family, cultural, religious, identity, and educational upbringing affect how we see the world and how we make our way through it. If something so seemingly simple as the color of the sky is unique to each of us, then it is certainly the case that something more complicated like sex and intimacy will also be unique to each of us. However, unlike the harmlessness of our differing opinions about the color of the sky, experts are clear that sexual abuse and assault is not open for debate or interpretation. There are negatively intentioned individuals that are actively causing harm and disregarding people's space and boundaries and consent. So there is black, and there is white, and there is wrong, and there is right. And there is a lot of space in between the two to prevent and intervene and change the stream of damage. In fact, there are massive gray areas where sexual harm and abuse occur daily at the intersection of ineffective and unclear laws, differing sex education, and cultural norms. Most of us are actually navigating sex and intimacy here, and yet most of us don't have the skills or tools to communicate what we want, let alone know what someone else wants. And it is here where harm occurs daily. We live in a country that is obsessed with sex, and sex is tied to power, control, and personal responsibility. And this country that we live in has used sex and power and control as means of oppressing whole populations of people and individuals. And so in order to cultivate healthy personal power, we must begin to engage with these histories and these gray areas that are external and internal and with those around us. I invite you to consider these questions. Is having sex with someone who is under the influence harmful? Can you even give consent if you are under the influence? Is it rape? Is it against the law where you live? What if both people are drunk? If you do not have a penis, can you rape someone? If you are a man and were raised as a guy, have you been asked to give consent, or asked if something feels good or safe or fun for you? Or are men just supposed to be horny all the time? The person next to you may see it differently. They answer to these questions, or similarly but for different reasons. And when two people come together in intimacy with differing understandings, there is a higher chance for risk to occur. Risk is cultivated in an environment of ignorance. Risk lives in the gray. And I know this because for the past 4 years, I've been making a documentary called Watch You Rise. Watch You Rise explores the impact of sexual trauma and the limitations and failures in our societies and families and justice and educational systems. And as products of these systems, we can all make mistakes and be harmed by those mistakes. I've interviewed over 80 youth and young adults across the country. The film focuses specifically on youth, young adults, and some experts, filming and interviewing survivors and perpetrators and some people who are both. My work began in this activism field 7 years ago, when I was hearing all of these stories of people coming forward about being sexually harmed and abused and assaulted. And yet they were coming forward 10, 20, 30, 40 years later. I wanted to give my peers and youth and young adults in general a space to come forward in the now. As the director of Watch You Rise, I've been interviewing people who have been harmed and people who have caused harm. And I've learned a lot. I've learned that typically people who cause harm have grown up in environments where harm was normalized, or where their personal space or boundaries were not taught or even respected, or where they themselves have been harmed. Now, these are not excuses in any way for inflicting harm onto another, but they are a reality of one of the many factors that is within the gray area that we can carry in to sex and intimacy. Here are some quotes from people I've interviewed. I thought by being a feminist, I would automatically be rid of my patriarchal and harmful behaviors. I thought I was just replicating the media that was created mostly for men and did not respect women or consent. We are not taught intimacy. We are not taught connection and how to let other people lead. Our culture is obsessed with sex, and yet our sex education system is failing us. 35 states in the US require an emphasis on abstinence when HIV and STI instructions are provided. And within that, Black, Indigenous students of color are far more likely than their white counterparts to receive abstinence-only instruction. Only 6 states require LGBTQIA inclusive curriculum, and only a quarter of our states require consent to be a part of our curriculum. So what are all these youth and young adults doing to fill in these educational gaps? Well, they're watching porn. But would you want to have your early experiences with someone who learned their moves from watching porn? No. You can do so much better. We as a community and as leaders and as parents can do so much better. But how? Well, we can begin to ask and listen to those around us. From asking and listening to the people around me in this film, I've learned so much. I've learned that sexual harm affects everyone, whether it's yourself, or your kid, or your partner, or your best friend, or coworker, or sibling. Anyone can be harmed, and anyone can cause harm. Anyone. Something can be technically consensual and still feel harmful. In the Watch You Rise film, I invite the participants to consider some questions, and I invite you to do the same. Have you ever been sexually harmed? Have you ever sexually harmed someone, intentionally or unintentionally? Your answers to these questions could be painful or uncomfortable, or they may just change over time. You may decide that you have a call or an email to make to someone who harmed you. Or maybe you want to reach out to someone that you could have potentially harmed. Maybe you want to check in on your old or new best friends. Maybe you want to check in on your kid, or see what sex education is being taught, or reaching out to your local school board. Maybe you want to be intimate in a new way, or ask the person you're being intimate with more questions. Maybe you want to have more compassion for yourself or someone else. And maybe, just maybe, like me, you may even see a different shade of blue in the sky. Thank you.